When you think of Japan, what comes to mind? Perhaps charming temples, cherry blossoms, and cities that look like scenes from futuristic movies. A country where perfection seems to be in every detail, whether in technology or cultural discipline. But is it like that for everyone? Hidden behind Tokyo's neon lights and the impeccable efficiency of large corporations, there is a Japan that is almost never shown. A side where poverty is real, entire neighborhoods live on the margins of society, and thousands of people struggle daily to survive. Did you know that Japan's elderly are committing minor crimes to get arrested and have food and shelter? Today, we will reveal what tourist guides don't show and the devastating impact of inequality in one of the world's richest countries. First, location and geographic data. Japan is one of those places that uniquely mixes everything. On one side, you have futuristic cities full of skyscrapers and neon signs. On the other, ancient temples surrounded by cherry blossoms and landscapes that look like they came out of a painting. Composed of more than 6,000 islands, Japan focuses its energy on four main ones: Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku. It's impressive how it manages to be so compact yet so diverse. One day, you might be crossing the crowded streets of Tokyo, and the next, you could be climbing Mount Fuji or relaxing in a traditional onsen, the hot springs that are a true refuge. The blend of tradition and modernity is fascinating. In one moment, you are in a tech district like Akihabara, surrounded by robots and game shops. The next, you could be in Kyoto, walking through temples and bamboo forest with the tranquility of someone who has traveled back in time. And let's not forget the seasons that transform the landscape, as if the country changes its face every few months. This entire contrast is what makes the country so special, full of contrasts and experiences that can't be found anywhere else in the world. Second, history. Japan's history is a plot full of twists, combining ancient tradition with radical transformations. Today, known for its advanced technology and fascinating culture, Japan has a trajectory marked by conquests, isolation, and rebirths. For centuries, the country lived under the rule of the samurai and the shogunate system, a period when war and discipline shaped its identity. It was only in the 19th century, during the Meiji Restoration, that Japan opened its doors to the world, modernizing at an impressive speed that led the country from a feudal society to an industrial power in a matter of decades. But success seemed to go to their heads, and the quest for power at all costs came at a high price. During World War II, Japan engaged in aggressive military expansion, culminating in the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by atomic bombs in 1945. This was a turning point. With surrender, Japan had to rebuild from scratch in the post-war period. It adopted a new constitution focused on peace and economic development, and it worked. In a few decades, it became one of the world's largest economies, dominating industries like electronics and automobiles. But like every story has two sides, the shine of modernity hides a less-known reality. Third, birth rate and aging population. In a place where technology and tradition coexist, it would be easy to imagine a perfect balance. But when it comes to demographics, things change. The birth rate is so low that some cities are practically disappearing, while the elderly population grows at an impressive rate. Believe it or not, today, there are more diapers sold for the elderly than for babies there. It's no exaggeration to say that this is already transforming the country's landscape. In Ichinomiya, for example, the birth of a child was recently treated as a historical event. It hadn't happened in 20 years. Meanwhile, to deal with the silence of the streets, residents have created a curious solution: life-sized dolls living the city's daily life. They are everywhere, swinging on seesaws, pushing carts, or simply greeting the rare visitors. But this demographic crisis affects not just city life. It has profound consequences for the economy. With fewer and fewer young people to support the pension system, the burden falls on the elderly, who face increasing difficulties living with dignity. We will talk more about them shortly, but first, let's explore the reasons affecting birth rates. Fourth, lack of sexual interest. The low birth rate in Japan has several explanations, but what lies behind this reality goes far beyond the cost of living or the difficulty of balancing work and family. Even though the government offers generous benefits to stimulate birth rates, like subsidies and tax incentives, the truth is that the root of the problem lies in a tangle of social issues ranging from shyness to disconnection with traditional relationships. For many young people, especially men, interest in real relationships is diminishing. The phenomenon is so common that it even has a name: Sekusu Shinai Shokun, or celibacy syndrome. According to a study by the Japan Family Planning Association, about 25% of men aged 16 to 24 stated that they despise sexual contact, a scenario that might seem strange to outsiders. Many men prefer to marry anime characters or immerse themselves in virtual worlds, seeking human connections. In an even more surprising example, some frequent establishments where, instead of seeking intimate relationships, they pay to rest their heads on a woman's lap just to talk face-to-face and have real contact. With this lack of emotional and physical connection, it's no wonder that birth rates are so low. This phenomenon, combined with one of the highest life expectancies in the world, has created a population where over 28% are 65 years or older. 5. Poverty. When it comes to Japan, the first image that comes to mind is a strong economy, cutting-edge technology, and an organized country where everything works. And it's not a lie, with an almost non-existent unemployment rate and a minimum wage reaching 5,000 yen, many think that prosperity is all there is. But the truth is quite different. Behind this facade, more than 20 million people live below the poverty line, according to the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare. This means that about 16% of the population faces difficulties covering basic needs such as food and housing. The hardest hit are single mothers and the elderly. For single mothers, especially those who had children while still in school, the reality is cruel. Many end up in temporary or part-time jobs with very low wages while trying to raise their children alone. Despite being efficient in many areas, the government does not offer enough support to alleviate this burden. And the elderly? Their situation is not easy either. With low basic pensions, many need to continue working even at an advanced age. And we are not talking about light jobs, but heavy ones that they can barely manage. Some elderly people even commit minor crimes just to be imprisoned, where they are guaranteed food, shelter, and medical care. In the past, children took care of their parents, but with the migration of young people to big cities, many elderly have been left behind without support. And the problem goes beyond. A recent survey revealed that almost 60% of Japanese families struggle to have enough food, clothing, or a place to live. 6. Homelessness. One of the reflections of this poverty is homelessness. Yes, it exists in Japan. In the post-war period, Japanese people struggled to ensure food and shelter in a devastated country. Poverty was mitigated as the Japanese economy got back on track. By the 1970s, there was a strong sentiment among many Japanese that they were living in a more egalitarian country where everyone belonged to the middle class. However, the gap between classes reopened in the 1990s after the economic bubble burst. Japan saw its stability crumble, companies abandoned lifelong employment, and the streets of major cities began to fill with homeless people. A scenario that seemed unthinkable decades earlier when the country boasted the title of middle-class nation. Today, it is estimated that around 1,700 people in Tokyo alone have no place to live. But this number is just the tip of the iceberg. Many do not appear in statistics because the government avoids highlighting the severity of the problem, displacing homeless people from public areas away from view. Homelessness in Japan presents itself in two forms. The more visible one is in large train stations and parks where tents and makeshift shelters appear at night and disappear by dawn. These people often depend on queues to get a bowl of soup or a piece of bread. But there is also the invisible face of this reality. Many homeless people sleep in capsule hotels, internet cafes, or even 24-hour fast food restaurants. It's hidden poverty that goes unnoticed by those who only look at the surface. In addition, almost all major Japanese cities have a place called doyagai, a play on words from the term yado, or inn, which despite its nice name, are urban slums. 7. Slums. Kamagasaki. It's hard to imagine that in such an advanced country like Japan, there are slums. But they exist, albeit out of the spotlight. The most well-known is Kamagasaki in Osaka, an area where about 25,000 people live in precarious conditions. The neighborhood, which officially no longer appears on maps, is an open wound that the city prefers to ignore. Kamagasaki is far from the modern and neon-lit image usually associated with Japanese cities. It lies in the shadow of Abeno Harukas, Japan's tallest building, which seems to observe its surroundings with indifference. For many, it's the last refuge, a destination for those seeking work, even if only for a day, or some form of government assistance. The nerve center of the neighborhood is the Aran Labor and Welfare Center, a place that should bring hope, but in practice only amplifies despair. It's there that men, usually over 60, gather every morning hoping to be picked for daily labor, often in construction or garbage collection. Many come from other regions of Japan, attracted by rumors of work opportunities. Most are former manual laborers, some who participated in rebuilding Japan after the war, who now find themselves discarded and forgotten. Living conditions in Kamagasaki are deplorable. Rented rooms in shared houses, the doya, are often no bigger than 2 square meters, with no windows or ventilation, just enough for a person to lie down. The lucky ones can afford to rent these rooms for a few days a month, while others sleep in the street or public parks. One of the neighborhood's symbols is the Nagai Park, where homeless people build makeshift huts with blue tarps and cardboard, creating a surreal scenery amidst trees and children's playgrounds. Despite everything, Kamagasaki has a strong community spirit. Residents help each other with what little they have, sharing food and clothing. Volunteers and social organizations also play a crucial role, distributing meals and providing medical assistance. However, the solution to these people's problems goes far beyond immediate help. Kamagasaki needs effective public policies that address the root of the issue, and not just its symptoms.